This is Talk Business and Politics with Roby Brock.
I'm Roby Brock. Welcome to today's Talk Business and Politics Daily. We're talking healthcare today, specifically adverse childhood experiences, where it's been playing out dramatically at the national level, as we've seen with the family separation policy. But it is much more of an everyday life experience for many kids in Arkansas, particularly through divorce, economic hardship, even domestic violence or community violence. I have two experts in the field with me here today. Dr. Chad Rodgers, he's a board-certified pediatrician, partner at Little Rock Pediatric Clinic, and Dr. Nikki Edge, professor in the UMS College of Medicine, Department of Family and Preventive Medicine. I'm outgunned here. I got two doctors on set, and I'm just a doctor of TV or something like that, if they even have one of those. Thank you both for being here. So,
thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Is my description of adverse childhood experiences fairly on point there?
I think it is fairly on point. I think you're right. I think we're kind of seeing how this is playing on the national stage as children are being separated from their parents, which is sort of what it would be an adverse childhood experience. As physicians, we have known for a long time social issues and how they affect our patients' care. We know that your zip code is sometimes the best indicator of your health outcomes. Mm-hmm. So over time, there's been a lot of theory about why that is, and now in the last couple of years, there's just been an overwhelming amount of evidence to show why that is, and a lot of it is because of traumatic events that children experience in childhood. And when we talk about traumatic events, we're not talking about a car wreck or falling out of a tree. We're talking about things that happen to these children during very critical times of development that not only had effects on their mental health, but also have significant effects on their physical health.
Dr. Edge, tell me a little bit about what some of those effects can be.
Sure. I see this play out in Arkansas classrooms, and one of the effects that we see is it manifests in children's behavior. So we hear from teachers every day who say something like, I have a 5-year-old in my classroom whose behavior is out of control. So out of control that I don't know how to create a learning environment here. And when we dig deeper, we find that there's an adverse childhood experience, oftentimes an ACE story sort of sitting behind this behavior. So we'll learn something like this child spent the first 4 years of their life living with domestic violence until a time came when dad hurt mom so bad that the police got involved, and now dad is incarcerated. And so we start to see these events pile up in a child's life. So for this child, it was domestic violence. For another, it might be living with a parent with substance use concerns, or experiencing physical, emotional, sexual abuse or neglect. And it will impact all aspects of their health and development. And I'll certainly defer to Chad, in a description of how it impacts health.
Yeah, you probably see some of these kids.
Right, in my practice, I think, and it's really begun to kind of change some of the way that when I see kids in the office and some of their behavior issues and some of their health issues. I think we know a lot by now about adults and how they've been impacted by adverse childhood experiences. There was a doctor in Southern California, Dr. Vincent Folletti, in the 80s, who was doing obesity research, and he found a lot of his patients, despite optimal management and successful weight loss, would often regain weight or have difficulty kind of complying. And when he kind of delved a little bit deeper, he found that a large percentage of those people had been sexually abused. So when the 90s, he started, he's at Kaiser Permanente, and with the CDC, they began to look at adults, about 17,000 adults who were all middle class, white, mostly men, had insurance, who despite optimal management could not manage their blood pressure and their diabetes well. So he took what he had learned from his obesity research and applied that and kind of developed a questionnaire about some different traumatic events that they may have occurred during their childhood, and he found that those had a significant impact on their ability to manage their own health care. So what we now apply that to children, and you see, these kids are kind of living in really traumatic, they're very stressed all the time, and this isn't good stress. This isn't like the stress that, I had growing up, where I had two parents to kind of help guide me through. This is really, frightful stuff. So these kids kind of stay in a constant state of flight or fright. And so they have all these stress hormones that are revved up in their body that increases your blood pressure, increases your heart rate. It actually decreases the blood flow to your gut and slows it down. It can have a lot of effects on your brain as well. So, you have a lot of kids that come in and they're really suffering, and they're really distracted, or they're really hyperactive, like Dr. Edge was talking about. Sometimes I have kids that you worked up from stem to stern with stomach aches, and you find nothing. And then if you deal with it a little faster, you'll find those adverse childhood experiences.
And so let's talk about two things, too, that I want to make sure we touch on. Arkansas, unfortunately, has more of a problem with this than the national average, number one. And number two, it looks like in some of the statistics on this, there's a big ethnicity gap here. We definitely see race as a factor in where there are more children of African American heritage that may have these kinds of problems as well.
These problems are very widespread in Arkansas. So about 30% of Arkansas children have experienced 2 or more of these events. So when I think about applying that to like a classroom, then you're thinking about in a classroom of 20, you've got 6 kids who've experienced things that have changed their brains in ways that are going to make learning really difficult. So it's undermined the parts of their brains that are focused on paying attention and learning, planning, organizing. It also undermines the part of their brain that helps them control their impulses and stop and think before they act. So we've got 10% of kids living in domestic violence, 12% of kids living with a parent with a substance use problem, double the national rate of children who have a parent who's incarcerated. And we do see those, some disparities. These concerns are not equally distributed across Arkansas. You'll find pockets in Arkansas counties where 30% of the county population has had 4 or more of these experiences.
Wow. So I guess just from a policy perspective, because this is where you guys are pushing, you've got a forum coming up, I think in late September on this, which is maxed out already, so we're not looking for anybody else to come to it at this point in time, but watch what comes from this. How do you set policy? This is so across so many different areas of education, of health, of when you're talking about domestic violence, when you're talking about substance abuse, there's just not a one type of fix or panacea for this. It involves something much more comprehensive.
It does. One thing I want to point out is exactly what you did, though, that whatever a policymaker is passionate about, whatever social problem they're concerned about, this is probably a driver of that. So as we look at ways to support families and prevent some of these things from happening, then we're going to fix whatever social problem, that they're most passionate about.
And I think the thing is, it's a really large problem. So there's not just a one, fix, that there's a multi-level fixes. And policy is definitely one of them. Anything that kind of supports children and families, reduces some of that stress, whether that's financial stress, or maybe it's access to health care, it's treatment for substance abuse, it's community resources that help support that family when they're homeless or when they have food insecurity, or really it's also about people becoming more aware of ACEs, including not just healthcare professionals, but educators and law enforcement and our policymakers for sure.
Yeah.
And the thread through all of that, I think, is anything that we do that increases a child's access to a safe, stable, supportive caregiver. Hopefully we can help that be their parent. And we can help that parent address any barriers that may keep them from being that person. And if it can't be their parent, then it can be any of us. It can be the grandparent, it can be the Sunday school teacher. But hopefully through home visiting or parenting education or substance abuse treatment or mental health treatment, we can help the parent be that person for the child.
Is there anything being, I guess, organized or formulated, maybe that'll be part of this conference that you guys have coming up here, that is going to be pushed out, that you'll be at the legislature trying to implement or change some things? What are some, maybe what's some low-hanging fruit that Arkansas could be doing better?
Right. Well, AFMC a couple of years ago, we've always worked within hospitals and clinics and sometimes nursing homes working on improving healthcare. And we really decided a couple of years ago we really need to get outside the walls of those kind of traditional medical establishments to begin to sort of have impact on some of these health issues and sort of the community resources that we need for people to be healthy. So over the last 2 years, we've kind of convened the ACEs work group, which is a lot of different community partners, some private, some public, from education, from healthcare, from business, kind of talking about what community resources are there. A lot of times we find that there are a lot of community resources and they're just not well, sort of people don't know about them or how to work together in order to kind of get people to the resources that they need. So that was sort of the purpose of the ACEs group. We're also kind of looking at where the places are that we need resources. And so out of that, we have had one summit last year. We're about to have our second summit of all these people to begin to discuss how we as Arkansans can begin to address these ACE issues.
Dr. Edge, I give you the last word on this.
Yeah. Well, one piece of low-hanging fruit that I see is how we support young children in their other care environments as well. So as you're familiar, we have a lot of advocates for high-quality early care and education programs. And so when a child can spend 8 hours a day in a safe, stimulating, nurturing environment, that's one of the best things we can do to help them succeed. So that's just one of these policy options we have.
All right, best of luck on the upcoming conference. We're talking about ACEs, that is Adverse Childhood Experiences. It's a phrase that you probably need to learn a little bit more about because it was one that I wasn't familiar with there. So Dr. Rodgers, Dr. Edge, thank you both very much. Appreciate you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ruby.
All right, that's all for today's Talk Business and Politics Daily. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.
Each day, the promise of our nation begins again. Arkansas and America, moving forward. I help make that promise a reality. It's not for everyone, but people everywhere depend on us.
Oh, I love you too, sweetie.
Trucking delivers, or everything stops. And that's what drives me.
I did.
Arkansas Electric Cooperative Corporation provides electric energy across 2/3 of Arkansas. This is an exciting time in our energy history, with incredible progress being made in renewable energy and storage technologies. As our energy portfolio continues to diversify, we'll maintain an all-the-above strategy to provide reliable and affordable electricity. Ever since the first light bulbs were placed in our members' homes, the electric cooperatives have been the solutions provider for our members, and we want to continue that well into the future.